Greetings and welcome to 60 is Significant, Life in the Fourth Quarter. I'm Dr. Sharon Ames-Denard, a clinical psychologist, educator, and serial entrepreneur. The singular goal of my channel is to impart wisdom that you can use. You're probably wondering why a 60-year-old would want to have a conversation about back-to-school issues. Well, I thought about it and I said to myself, oh yeah, it's true, our children are all adults, but many of us have grandchildren and they are the future, and we want to invest in them properly to ensure that they are successful in their endeavors. So with that notion in mind, today's episode focuses on back-to-school issues. Now, the children have gone through a turbulent period. They have been out of school for 12 months or so, and now they're expected to reintegrate back into the school system, and they need to be fully prepared to make the necessary adjustments. So I have some tips for you about how to do that. I'd like to begin with a story. A few years ago, I was contacted by the administrators of a failing school to consult to perhaps engage in a pilot test of infusing the highly successful Sakara model developed by my husband and myself into the public school arena. And whenever I go in to consult with a school, one of the first things I want to do is sit in on the classroom and see a teacher when they're fresh in the morning and excited and gung-ho and ready to start the day, as well as see them at the end of the day when they've had perhaps one or more challenges. And let's face it, after a hard day's work, you're tired. And I want to say that I fully support teachers. I think teachers are great. They're wonderful. They are hardworking people. It's the system and the systemic issues of how education is conceptualized in this culture that makes it difficult for them to do their jobs often. And let me give you an example of that. When I did visit the classroom, I noticed that the learning process is totally different from what many of us grew up on. For example, we grew up with a blackboard. Now there's a whiteboard. Often there are projections on the whiteboard and there are virtual assistants in the classroom. So I watch, much to my chagrin, virtual PE, which is something easily led by a child or easily led by the teacher herself. So there's virtual PE, but there's also a little timer in the corner. So a teacher has to stay on track with the timer. When the timer expires, they're expected to move on to the next lesson. You can see the problem there. There's not a lot of time for the child to go front and center in front of the classroom and share their wisdom, their knowledge, their insights about what they're learning. I didn't see children that had any time at the actual board to write on like we used to do. We went to the actual blackboard to compute math, and I just didn't see any of that. And again, administrators generally decide what the curriculum is going to look like. In a technological age, there's a large dependency on technology, and I don't think that it's necessarily serving our children well. So that being said, if you want to see what is going on in the classroom, I highly advise that you schedule an appointment and sit in on a class. That's your prerogative and your right as a parent, as long as it is scheduled. So you may want to talk to your school about that. Well, how are children doing exactly? Well, that was the question that I had. What are the statistics? What are the percentages of children that are actually proficient in a subject? And proficiency means that if you are in the fourth grade and it's the third month of the fourth grade, that you actually are proficient in the area of reading, for example. If I test you and then your score is the equivalent of fourth grade, third month. All right. Advanced means that you're usually a grade level above your current grade placement. And if you'd like to know how your state is doing, you'd like to know about, I'm going to share national statistics with you, but if you want specifically to know about your state, about your region, or your racial group, then you can go to a website titled nationsreportcard.gov. And the most recent statistics are for 2019, and that is pre-COVID. And these statistics are quite dismal. So, reading, for example, fourth graders in reading, 35% are reading at grade level or are proficient in reading. Proficient and advanced, or advanced, I should say. When it comes to 8th grade, only 34%. And this is out of 100%, of course, so that's pretty bad. 12th grade is 37% are proficient in reading. When it comes to math, 41% of 4th graders, 34% of 8th graders, and then only 24% of 12th graders are proficient. And I want to share a little comment about 12th grade. When you get to 12th grade math, that's pretty sophisticated math. So you're talking Algebra 1, Algebra 2, geometry, you're talking pre-calculus and calculus if you are advanced. And so children are struggling specifically in math. They're not doing well in reading, obviously, but there's some substantial struggle in mathematics. Writing, which is closely aligned with reading. My mother-in-law was fond, who was a lifelong educator, was fond of saying, if you can't write it, if you can't say it, then you can't write it. All right, you have to have a repertoire of words to write. In writing, 4th grade, only 28% are proficient or advanced in writing, 27% at 8th grade level, and only 27% at the 12th grade level. This is my plug for infusing power words into the language that your children use, all the way down to pre-kindergarten. Let me give you an example. When you enter the classroom at the beginning of the day, you offer a greeting to the teacher and you say, "How are you, Mrs. Smith?" And Mrs. Smith responds, and then she usually in turn says, "And how are you today?" And the child can say something like, "I am magnificent," if they're feeling well, or "I feel a little somber today," if they're not feeling up to par. So those are power words. And if you start infusing them at the pre-kindergarten, elementary grade level, then when you get up to the higher grades, 11th and 12th, when you're thinking about taking the ACT or the SAT, you'll have a full cornucopia of words to use in your writing as well as in your speaking. Now I'd like to introduce to you what I term my responsibility pie. And my pie is divided into 3 portions. The P stands for parent, the T for teacher, and the S for student. And if we want to develop our children fully into children that are competent, capable, confident beings, contributors to society and humankind, then all of this pie has to hold down their individual portions. What's interesting about this pie is that no one can carry anyone else's portion. And far too often in today's climate, someone is asking one other or more people to handle more than their fair share. And so today I want to discuss with you what is your responsibility if you're a parent, a teacher, and a student. So let's start with the parent. As a parent, and this is such a serious job, and it's difficult. I'm not making light of it. It's difficult, but it's necessary. All right. A parent has to provide all of the resources that a child needs to execute their full-time job. What is the child's full-time job? School. So that means the kid has to have paper, pencil, supplies. The kid has to be, their personal hygiene is something that parents supervise in the early years. Parents have to be concerned about proper food and nutrition. We have far too many children that are living off of chicken nuggets, potato chips, and soda. Green food is brain food. We need fresh leafy vegetables incorporated into the diet. Kale, broccoli, spinach, green beans don't count, by the way. But any type of fresh vegetable cooked into the cuisine at home so that we can feed the brain the nutrients that it needs to thrive. Because if we don't do that, then it'll atrophy and it'll be of no utility for us. The parent is also to make sure the child gets to school on time and that they are prepared and ready to engage the educational process. So that means they got adequate sleep at night as well. And what we're finding is that, let's say if you're tardy, let's take that for example. If you're tardy in the morning, then you're likely to have missed language arts. That's usually the first class that rolls out in the morning. And sadly, the teacher has no time throughout the remainder of the day to double back and get your child what they miss. So attendance is critical, critical, critical. Make sure that your child's there and ready to engage the learning process. The teacher is pivotal because the teacher has to be there. He or she needs to be competent. They need to be creative. They need to be mindful and present, motivated, often animated, so that they are able to engage the child in the learning process. Children should be having a good time learning and growing and developing, and that's the role of the teacher. The teacher also has a relationship with the parent because the teacher is an ally. She is to notify you if there are any kind of concerns, whether they're behavioral, whether they're academic, so we can jump on those right away and try to intervene appropriately so that your child can have a successful school year. The student is to come to school prepared, ready to engage the learning process. And that means that they're attentive. That means that they're following the rules. That means that they are respectful. That means that they are helpful. Helpful not only to the teacher, but also to their peers. And if the parent, the teacher, and the student working in concert each hold down their third portion of the pie, I guarantee you'll have a successful school year. Finally, a few safety tips. Sadly, we live in a world where there's still human trafficking, there are abductions, and there are people that don't have our children's best interest at heart. So, the first recommendation is to develop and establish a safety word, so that whenever this child utters this word to you, that means that they're in a state of distress and that you know that they're in imminent danger and need your immediate assistance. So make sure you establish that word with your child, and if you should be on the phone with your child and they utter this word, that means that there's a problem and you should get to them immediately. Hopefully that could save their lives. Also, if a child is abducted, one of the things they recommend is that if you ever put in the trunk of a car, to try to punch out the lights that are in the rear lights, and then stick your hands out and wave them, because obviously no child should ever be in the trunk of the car, and another driver witnessing that would know that that was a dangerous situation. So safety is first and foremost, so make sure your child has the tools to ensure their safety as best they can. Also, many children still refer to their parents as mom and dad, and they don't actually know their name or their telephone number or their home address. So these are things that you can rehearse with your child to ensure that they'll know how to contact you if there is a problem. Point number 2, dealing with bullies. Sadly, we're in an era of bullies. They were bullies when I was a kid, and they were good and terrible. And I was one of the people that was terrorized by them. So when you have a bully, you cannot get anything done because you're always focused on your personal safety. Like me, I hid out in the bathroom, missed a lot of lunches, and we don't want your children to have those kind of traumatic experiences. One of my recommendations is that when they are experiencing bully behavior, that they report it to a responsible adult, and that they also feel comfortable reporting it to you as their parent. But then next to that, I am a strong proponent of martial arts. My children, prior to integrating into the public school system, I signed them up for jiu-jitsu. Now, martial arts is designed obviously for self-defense, but it also teaches you how to diffuse situations that are problematic. And when you take a martial arts, you're trained to be alert, how to pay attention to what's in front of you, what's on both sides of you, what are you listening to, how you carry yourself, and how you move about, your gait, how you move about. These are all signs that let a bully know that you're not the one that they should be fooling with or attempting to bully. So bullies tend to prey upon the vulnerable, the people that they can get away with bullying. So if your kids have the resources that they don't look like they would tolerate that, then they're not likely to be disturbed by the bully. Number 3, as a safety measure. Now, I like sports. I really do. I like the entertainment of sports. I like track. I like basketball, baseball, those kinds of things. Now, when it comes to those serious contact sports, that's when I'm about to split hairs with many of you. The brain is such a sensitive organ. It cannot tolerate being knocked around left to right, backwards and forward. The neck is very sensitive. And we don't want our children to end up with a traumatic brain impairment because they got hit or they got tousled into the air, fell back down on the pavement. So I would just admonish parents to think seriously about what kind of sports they're going to endorse and what they would like to see their children participate and engage in. All right? So those are my safety tips. Last up, I got one more safety tip. And that has to do with this little box right here, this trusty computer. You know it as the computer, the laptop, or there's the iPad, or there's the phone. All of those gadgets can be a great asset to anyone who's using them properly. They are a total nightmare if they are misused. You would be alarmed by the kinds of content that your child can access as a pre-K student, first grade. There's no filter on this little box unless you set up certain filters and their inability to access certain things. So think seriously about the content that your children are able to activate on these tools. And then finally, I just want to make some recommendations to you. These recommendations are not because I get any kind of personal kickback, okay? Just got to say that for the record. And before I give my last tip, I want you to like the button and then subscribe to this channel if you like the content, and leave me a message. What would you like to know more about? And I'll see what I can do about accommodating your requests. All right. And I want to talk lastly about resources. Now, school has books. Some counties and districts have more supplies and materials than others, but there's a way to supplement even the best of the best materials that your school may have to offer. And that's by shopping at Sam's, Costco, and my favorite place to hang out, the Dollar Tree, because it's so cheap because everything's $1. Now, this is an example. This is a complete curriculum for 6th grade. Great tool because listed within it all the benchmarks for 6th grade. Now, it retails for $19.95. And if I were to order it online, I probably would have to pay $19.95, perhaps maybe a 10% discount or something. But I bought it from one of the big box stores, the discount stores. As you know, Sam's and Costco, you have to pay a membership, and then you get a rebate at the end of the year based on how much you spend. So it cost me $12.47 at the big box store. And I love the Dollar Tree because everything's $1. The book aisle, the educational supply aisle, sadly, is never crowded. So, and usually in your city, there are multiple Dollar Trees, so you can find different things at different places. All right, so check out those places for manipulatives, books, and all kinds of educational materials to facilitate your students' learning and to ensure that they have a successful, productive 2021-22 school year.